Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Petersen. I am a Film Prize alumni. I also co own, produce, write, act, and direct for our company, Bespoke Works LLC. That's also based here in Shreveport. I wanted to say thank you all so much for tuning in to this screenwriting workshop on dialogue. And so I'm kind of just giving my perspective on what I think can craft dialogue that is unique and specific to your work and something that can really allow your characters to pop without becoming too overbearing. So, we're going to sort of get right into it, and I'm just going to say what my top aspects are to good dialogue to keep in mind. Number 1 is motivation. What are they trying to accomplish? And that also keeps them active. The second one, and to me this is one of my favorites, it's nuance. So, one thing that I'm constantly struggling with personally, and I learned this during read throughs and table reads with other people, is that my dialogue sometimes comes off very Paul with all the characters. And so, ever since I learned that, I've been trying to really find the colloquialisms, I've been really trying to find the specificities to each character. So nuance for me is really a big one. So that way, all of your characters don't just get sort of jumbled up in the story you're trying to tell. Number 3 is pace. Being a screenwriter, I think I always imagine what it's going to look like on the screen. It's produced, it's getting done. But a lot of people kind of skip the first step, and that is to make it a readable script. Like, it needs to be read. The biggest thing for me, that I think the part of the process that I enjoy the most, especially with writing dialogue, is a table read. It's the scariest thing on the planet for me, but it's also the most thrilling and the most rewarding, because you were doing a table read, you're finally hearing that dialogue out loud that in your head made sense with how certain things are worded. But then all of a sudden you hear it in someone else's voice and you're just like, ooh, yeah, that just sounds weird. That doesn't sound right. And what I often like to do as well for table reads is, if I'm the one orchestrating it, I will send it out to the people that I have in mind to read these roles. I'll say, if you could read this ahead of time, and then here are some elements for how I see your character. And then you just hear it out loud. And there's something really fun about that. Like I said, also frightening, but if there's one thing you should do, it's to sort of, it's a vulnerable creative space that you're in. But at the same time, you can't hide your stuff. So that's why I'm open-minded to any and all perspectives. And that's what's huge, because you never know what kind of magic can come from someone else's perspective. Number 4 is relationship. So when you're constantly in each scene, if it's a 2-person scene, 3-person, 5-person, whatever, or even just a 1-person scene, what's the relationship to who they're speaking with? And I think that will also sort of guide you down that little meandering river of motivation. Number 5 is focus. So what focus means, and usually this is about, for me, like the 3rd or 4th draft down the line, is it's so easy to get lost in dialogue, to just say what's on your mind. You have something in your heart that you want the world to know, but it's so easy to become philosophical. And often when I'm an audience watching someone who's just, you can tell when a writer is writing a monologue and all they're doing is sharing their viewpoint on the world. And it doesn't seem like the character. It just seems like, hey, I'm a writer, I have this thought, and I want the world to know about it. So focus is pretty big for me. But the biggest one, the absolute biggest element to your dialogue in your script, is character. That is, so there's like 6. Character is absolutely pivotal. It's vital. And what I mean by character is, whatever your character says, really, in my opinion, needs to inhabit who they really are on the inside. I think that's such a valued asset, because often we kind of forget about character sometimes when we're working on dialogue, because we're like, oh, that's a cool line, or, ooh, I like it going this direction, but you don't really go back to the core of what is my character? Who is my character? So remember the top 5: motivation, nuance, pace, relationship, focus, and then the big kahuna, character. One thing that I have that's actually really helpful when I write scripts, even if I don't have writer's block or if I'm not at a stalemate with my character or my script, is It's called the Writer's Emergency Pack. Mine's pretty beat up, as you can tell. But what's really cool about this is it's pretty much 52 cards from John August, who wrote Big Fish. That's what you might know him for. And he pretty much presents like these little ideas that are just random, like different exercises, or maybe think about this or that. And he has one on dialogue, which I think is really interesting. Dialogue is great, but sometimes your characters need to shut up and do something. Look for ways to take away their ability to talk and force them to find other ways to communicate. There are countless ways to make normal speech impossible, from stealth to equipment failure to foreign languages. Silence can also be a choice. Maybe your hero isn't saying anything because he's simply done talking. So, one other thing that I think is incredibly important is we rarely say what is exactly on our minds when you think about that. So, there's an interesting book that's called Changing Direction. It's written by Lenore DeKoven, and it's a practical approach to directing actors in film and theater. So you might be like, as a writer, why would I need to know that? I think great aspects of dialogue and just writing scripts in general can come from the trifecta of creation, writing, acting, directing. What she describes is what we are trying to do as storytellers, as directors and actors, is recreate human behavior. Now, it might seem obvious, but really think about what that means. You are recreating human behavior. You can't create that without living a little bit yourself. And I know we're in strange times right now, but there are so many moments, especially with dialogue, where my ears are constantly open in public. I'm constantly observing. And human behavior, when I am looking at dialogue, is we constantly talk over each other. We think before we speak if maybe something is profound or something is a discovery. And we often don't say exactly what we mean, and that's why it drives the audience nuts, especially in romances. It's just like, just say you love each other. Well, people don't really do that in real life. That's where the nuance comes in. And then that way, when that big moment comes, when it happens, you're like, it's been so worth it going through all this to get here. Which then leads me to another sort of final aspect is Michael Chekhov's veiling technique. And this is mainly for actors, is you allow it to simmer to a boil. It's rare in films to see someone start with the big line and revelation and then see the fallout of the scene after that. You kind of see more of a build to it. So you're starting to see all these little hints being introduced here or there, and you're just kind of like, oh, what are they saying? So what they're saying is not really what they want to say, because characters and people in real life rarely say what they mean. And sometimes, especially in a film, because it's so much visual, because it's so much show, not tell, it's best for characters not to talk. It's best for characters to have an elongated sigh or a big breath or some facial expression that the audience can see, to get that moment of silence, just like we were talking about with John August, where it's like, maybe we don't need dialogue here. Maybe it can be communicated, because guess what? You're in a film medium. You have close-ups, you have wides, you have design, you have lighting, you have all of these aspects to create your world in film. So while I love good old-fashioned dialogue, sometimes it's better to just let them be silent and let the visuals do the talking. What I'm going to do is something kind of interesting. I am going to pull out a page of one of my old screenplays, and then I'm going to go through a page of the dialogue of it and sort of say, hey, Paul, this is what you were thinking at that time, and here's what you know now. Let's make some adjustments and see if we can really punch up this script. So let's get to work. Let's get to work. This should be pretty fun. Okay, so the script that we're going to look at, I just chose it. I think I found a pretty good scene. It's from a short film titled Autumn Lake that I wrote a few years ago, probably 2015, so 5 years ago. Wow. And Autumn Lake revolves around an 11-year-old girl named Anne who was born blind. And it just so happens that she pretty much has a lake for a backyard, and there's a dock that leads out to the deep water. And her mother is a helicopter parent, one of those who, because her daughter's blind, because she had an accident when she was younger, when Anne was younger, she almost drowned. And so her mom doesn't want to let her, even get close to that water ever again. An old friend of the mother moves back into town and they run into each other at the grocery store. And this old friend has a son named Isaac. And so Isaac comes over to Anne's house for dinner when they all meet up again. And Isaac and Anne go for a walk. He's never really met a blind person in his whole life. And they're walking around the property. He's learning about her. She's learning about him. And it should also be known that it's been established that she knows this property like the back of her hand. Oh gosh, this is out there in the world. Here we go. This is the original. And then this one over here is going to be the rewrite. So I know you have two versions on your computer right now. So I'm going to cover the new one up. The biggest things that I felt needed a lot of work were these are 11-year-old kids. I wanted to establish the relationship and make it much more focused. The original version reads like this. Anne and Isaac walk along the roped fence, her boundary. Isaac, can I ask you something? Yeah. Do you have like superhuman hearing or smell? Stop. You hear that? What? They come to a dead stop. She puts her hand on his chest. She's crying. You don't hear that? In the distance? No sounds. No, I don't hear anything. Shh, it's over there. She's whispering now. She's getting closer. She's saying, help me. What? Shh, listen. You're freaking me out. Where? Anne lets out a small laugh. Oh, haha, very funny. I don't have super senses. I just use them more, so they're better. As they walk, her hand follows the rope of the boundary. Page 1, right? So I'm going to do side by side now and show you what I did to adjust it. And keep in mind, I would adjust something further, but this is just my initial process going at it and looking at it. The first thing I did was I took out, can I ask you something? And her saying, yeah, because Isaac is 11. He's going to ask whatever he wants. When I wrote these characters originally, I wanted them to be so likable and polite and this and that. And I was like, they're kids. No one's like that. I mean, sometimes they are, but it sounds far away over there. Isaac perks his ear up to the direction she points. No, I don't hear anything. And then she cuts him off with the shh. In the original over here, Isaac says, no, I don't hear anything. And she goes, shh, it's over there. So keep in mind, I get to mess with pacing a little bit. So now I know that she's kind of controlling the situation. So instead of him finishing the word anything with a period, now that you take out the G, you put a dash, we know she cuts him off. And then she goes, shh, it's over there. She's whispering now. She's getting closer. She's saying, help me. So I used italics for the help me. And then he still can't get the line out. What? So now we know that she's kind of just in her own world, building this up, and he can't get a word in edgewise. What? Shh, listen, you're freaking me out. And then Anne lets out a small laugh. There is a part of me that I could just, put like pregnant pause, which usually just means anticipatory. It means, pregnant pause. And then she lets out a small laugh or something like that. And then he goes, oh, ha ha, very funny. So here's what I want you to look at. Haha, very funny. That was darn near a whole page that scene was. This is a short film, remember? And I just want all the information to come out as direct, succinct, but also still get across the same message. So I can communicate more with less. And that cut out, about an eighth of a page. And then she says, I don't have superhuman senses. I just use them more, so they're better. So she's already saying something that Isaac knows because that's why he asked the question in the first place. So that didn't make much sense to me. So I just took it out, and then so you don't see anything. I italicized anything. That's one way to sort of tell the actor, I guess, that they should emphasize that word. But also the reader, when I'm constantly thinking about the reader. So now the reader's reading it as, so you don't see anything? Whereas originally it's just like, so you don't see anything. And then her answer was nothing. If you told me something was blue, I'd have no idea what you were talking about. I was born like this. Needless exposition, just nope. And so there's more in the silence now. So he doesn't need to say that's a drag, and nor would he even want her to think that that's a drag. Instead, she continues on and Isaac just stops and he looks at her with empathetic eyes and she turns. Are you okay? And so now when she walks back, knowing exactly where he stopped, we know through action that her other senses are definitely on point. She knows exactly where he stopped. So I can show that through action. And she lifts her hands toward his face. Now, when you look at the original of this makes zero sense. She gently goes to feel his cheeks and nose. This is the original. Smooth and rotund, soft features. You see, this tells me you're nice and comical. What 11-year-old Paul talks like that? None. Zero. I would change the next two lines for sure with how she describes him. That just doesn't work. But I do want it to lead to this line right here. See, I can tell so much about you without having to see you, which is really cool. It's kind of a cool thing. So my number one goal moving forward would be I'd want to work this all out right here and then get it to lead to a point. See, I can tell so much about you without having to see you. But I mean, maybe it could even be I can tell so much about you without seeing you. He flexes his gut hard. This is fun. This is a fun moment. He's like, here, punch my stomach. See, as an athlete, that's established earlier in the script. Here, punch my stomach as hard as you want. He's a kid. He's a guy. He's like, yeah, come on. And so this doesn't bug me. She feels for the gut and gets her mark. She punches. You forgot abs of steel. So I would put in a funny narration line. She actually knocks the wind out of him. Now, what I could do here is through a dire inhale and then colon. This is something I like to do, is just colon, so we know like right away, you forgot abs of steel. Ha ha ha, they laugh, whatever. So that's the part that I would work on, is just this leading up to her saying, see, I can tell so much about you without seeing you. Now, instead, shouldn't you be holding on to the rope so you don't trip or something? You sound like my mom. Don't. Now, instead, she says, ugh, you sound like my mom. So she takes one step, then another and another. Her foot hits a rock and she falls forward. Kind of looking for that, she's like, I got this. And then she falls, but he catches her, not without a little laughter. Before he was saying sorry, have no idea why he was saying sorry. And so I didn't know why Anne would reply, no, laugh, I like it. Like, she wouldn't know what he's saying sorry for. Just like, he helps her, sorry. So take care of that, So now you just say, sorry for laughing. And then, no, laugh, I like it, it's fine. People trip. That's probably my favorite line, I think, of this scene. No, laugh, I like it, it's fine. People trip. They continue toward the water. She doesn't hold onto the rope. Instead, she puts her arm in his. That's the moment we were leading to this whole time, was her to find him as a companion, to put her arm in his, and he's got her. That's the moment I wanted to get to with this scene. That was the motivation. And a lot of times, like I said, we don't say what we mean. We don't say what's exactly in our heads. And so they just do it in their own way. And eventually you still get to that place. And in this version, which is now darn near half a page shorter, it's cleaner, it's more to the point, it's more focused. And now I feel like the beat of her arm holding his hits so much more because we got rid of a lot of this mess. So listen, that's what I got for you. I know it's super quick. I could talk for hours. But yeah, best of luck to all of you and great work. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to see what all of you do. So hopefully this was somewhat enlightening. And yeah, thanks again for joining me. It's been an honor to be here. Cheers.